Deadlock is a super unique game. It combines the chaotic fights of hero shooters with the deep macro and build crafting that some of you guys probably know from League of Legends or Dota. And while it is the most fun I ever had in any competitive video game and is not even released yet, there is one issue that has been plaguing Deadlock for the last few months, and as it stands right now, that issue is only getting worse, and that is balance. What are the issues, why do I think we're going in the wrong direction, and how does Valve turn this around and make the game fair and fun for both low and high rank players? Let's get right into it. Hey guys, what's up? This is Metro, and I know today's topic is going to be controversial. I know I'm going to get a lot of backslash for this, but someone has to talk about it. It is the balance of Deadlock. And when I talk about balance, it's really a super complicated topic because what you perceive as balanced in lower rank or middle ranks is very different than high rank players playing this game. So let me get this out of the way first. I think Deadlock is best when every character is viable in the game, right? That's when the game is greatest, when you can play whatever hero you want to play and there's some sort of viability. You don't feel too far behind picking the character, but you also don't feel completely overpowered, right? That's gonna be obviously really hard to achieve, right? In any competitive video game, there's always gonna be metas, there's always gonna be characters that are better than other characters. And I understand we're still in a closed alpha. So right now, Valve's interest is definitely getting as many players to participate in the playtest as possible. And now if we look at the numbers in terms of player base in the last few days, weeks, it paints a pretty bleak picture. And usually I don't like looking at these pictures because I think it is kind of doomer, right? We just had the massive, or a few months ago now, we had a massive update with 6 new heroes, right? It was an amazing update and it brought in a lot of new players. In fact, before then, right, we had a very, I don't want to say low, right? We had a very steady player count of like around 15,000 for like multiple months. And that is still really good for an alpha. In fact, most games that release, even AAA games, don't get those player counts, concurrent players in their lifetime, right? So I'm not unhappy about the numbers. And then we had a massive uptick with the latest update, which was amazing, right? The content that Valve produces right now is amazing. And the next balance or the next major update is announced for December. So I'm sure that's going to bring a lot new players in. And eventually down the line, we're going to be in a, hopefully open alpha kind of thing where everyone can join, or like a full release, and then the game is going to pop off, right? So the reason I'm making this video is because there's one thing that I'm concerned with, which is the balance. And if we look at the latest balance patch, it happened last week. And usually after a balance patch, the game is supposed to feel a bit fresh, right? It brings new characters into the meta and rotates some others out of the meta. But this balance patch really didn't do that at all. In fact, it amplified a lot of the issues that the game had right before then, and you can really see this, in my opinion, in the player count, especially if you look at like the 3-month graph, right? Like every weekend we have an uptick in players, and it's normal for the game to go down over time. But this patch made the player numbers lower than before the patch, and we're now approaching the next weekend, and it looks like even on the weekend we won't see like a massive uptick in players, which means people are leaving Deadlock, okay? And that doesn't mean they're gonna quit Deadlock forever. I think the community sentiment overall is still pretty good about the game, right? We're all excited for the eventual release of the game, but people seem to enjoy this patch less. And again, I think that's because a lot of issues weren't addressed. But that's not the point of this video. The point of this video really is that I think there were issues that haven't been addressed for the year, or over the year that we've been playing Deadlock now on, right? And that issue is that Valve seems to have a very skewed sense of balance. And what I mean by that is that they seem to balance for win rates and low rank, like super newbie players only, and disregard a lot of what is happening on middle to high rank. And some of you watching this video will definitely also be affected by this, okay? I'm not only talking about Eternal 6, I'm also talking about Ascendant, I'm talking about Phantom. So I'm talking about players that have played the game for a while, that, have multiple hundreds, thousands of hours in the game, that love the game, which a lot of you guys watching I think are. A character that I think is a really good example for this is Pocket, okay? Pocket historically has had a low win rate in every single rank. In fact, this win rate right now is sitting at 48% with a 33% pick rate across all ranks. And even if you sort this by like higher rank games, if you were to look at the win rate alone, you would assume, wait, Pocket is actually balanced, if not even weak, right? In reality, this character in high rank is performing really well and has been performing at the top of all heroes for the last year, okay? He's seen consistent play in pro play, he's seen consistent play in Eternus, and once a player gets around to learning Pocket's kit, this character is incredibly oppressive in the sense that he can nuke you in a second, but also can never die if you play it properly, right? Because he has so many escape abilities. And this is not going to be a video where we're like, oh, nerf Pocket, right? It's just an example of the overall balance issue. This applies to a lot of heroes in the game right now that are nukers, okay? What I mean with nukers are characters that deal most of their damage in a very short period of time. And the meta we have right now, and the meta we had since the 6.0 patch, in fact, for like 2 or 3 months before the 6.0 patch, is a nuke meta, where the characters that seem to come out on top in high rank are characters that can just kill you in a second without really any repercussions, without really any danger. And those characters, if you haven't watched my new tier list, are characters like Pocket, but also characters like Mina and characters like Paradox, right? Paradox, right now, considered one of the most broken characters by pro players. And as you see, if we're looking at the win rates alone, this really doesn't seem like it's an issue, right? In fact, here, Phantom to Eternus, McGinnis seems to be the strongest character in the game, right? Now, if you know anything about the game, you know this is not the case, right? Like, McGinnis arguably underperforms in almost every rank. What you have to consider is an ease of use factor. A character like McGinnis is very easy to get into in any rank. Even if you're not super mechanically skilled and you don't really have a lot of experience on the hero, you will do your job, right? You will get your value out, like you throw the turret somewhere, you throw the healing pad under your feet and you get your value, right? It's not a super hard, complicated hero to play or to get into, but that shouldn't be the case for all characters. I think, in fact, it's great that there's heroes like McGinnis or like Haze that are really easy for new players to understand. Haze, historically, right, super popular characters because everyone coming into Deadlock that is coming from a shooter background like Overwatch or like Marvel Rivals, right, or like Counter-Strike, whatever, you know, they're drawn to characters. Wait, this character just shoots their gun and they do a lot of gun damage. So it's great that characters like Haze and McGinnis exist that are easy to get into. Same thing for something like a Moon Krill, right? If you're coming from a MOBA background and you've played Dota or League, but you're not really super versed in shooters and your aim is not really good, then you can very easily pick up a hero like Moon Krill as your first character and do great, right? So I think in terms of hero design, Valve is doing an amazing job. But here's where the issue comes in. The more they develop the game, the more there's heroes added that have additional layers of difficulty, right? Like a lot of the new characters that are released, Dorman and Mina come to mind, are not super easy to get into, right? Like they require some set of base understanding of the game that other characters like Moon Krill don't. On Mina, if you don't have decent movement, it's very easy to die, right? Because if you're not using your movement abilities properly, Mina is very squishy. So on paper, for a new player, she might seem really weak. But then again, once you get to like Eternus games only, characters like Mina outperform everyone in the lobby for the longest time in the game. And I just booted up a game here as background footage, you know, just to yap over. This is just the highest ranked game going on in Europe right now, while I'm recording this video. And while Mina doesn't have the highest net worth in the lobby, you can clearly see that she is very far ahead of everyone on the other team. And I'm sure if you go back in the match ID of this game, you will realize most of the time when you watch a Mina on high rank, they will have the highest net worth in the lobby. Why is that? Mina, incredibly strong in lane, right? Can almost always win the lane, no matter what she's laned up with. She is one of the strongest laners, but then she also performs incredibly well in the early mid game, in the middle mid game, in the late mid game, right? And then only super late in the game does she fall off. The way the game is being played in high rank is very different than the way it's being played in low rank. Most high rank games end within 25 to 30 minutes. This is actually a rare exception of a game where the game might last longer than 30, but like judging from the net worth right now, this game should end like in the next 5 minutes. And you know, if I'm wrong here and the game goes on further, you can follow it in the background. I look really dumb. My point really is most high rank games end really, really early, which means characters that perform really strong in the early game are gonna be better because the late game just doesn't exist a lot of the time. And that is not really a game design issue. I would argue there is a late game in high ranks. It's just after like 20 minutes. Because after 20 minutes, the kill time or the respawn time is so high on characters that getting a team wipe will lead you to get a free mid boss, will lead you to down the Patreon, right? And then a good team will finish off the enemy team in the fight after. Whereas in low ranks, all the way up to Ascendant actually, games tend to last 30 minutes plus almost always. Because people are not super advanced yet and they don't know how to end the game in an efficient manner. And the longer the game goes, the stronger carry characters become, okay? And what do I mean by carry characters? I'm gonna keep this very clear. This has nothing to do with spirit or gun damage, okay? A carry character is a character that benefits a lot more from getting a lot of souls, okay? I can give you 2 examples. A character like Wraith, right? There's always another item that will add a lot of damage. And she always has like more items that she can buy to where she gets a lot stronger. Whereas a character like Dynamo, right? You buy Warpstone, you probably buy Refresher, some other spirit items, but then you're kind of at your limit, right? You have 2 black holes to fight, and of course you can add more damage like Mystic Reverb on the Stomp, but you're not gonna like outduel a Wraith in the late game, right? And that's just how MOBAs work, okay? In other MOBAs, it's actually even more clearly defined. In other MOBAs, there's literally a role, right? Like ADC carry in League or the safe lane carry in Dota. That just needs a lot of farm to get online. They're very weak early without farm, but once they get farm, they're very strong. And just to explain this for people that are not super versed in MOBAs, that doesn't mean that those characters are stronger. It just means they're played differently than other characters, which is the beauty of MOBAs, right? So what I mean by that is a good team composition in Deadlock is a team composition that has characters that are strong early, and then ideally some characters that are strong in mid and some characters that are strong in late. At least one late game carry, right? Because if you don't have any character that is strong in the late game, once it gets to the late game, you will just lose, right? Because if the enemy has like a lot of damage at the end and you don't, it's just over, right? That's like really what makes a MOBA, and I think what makes Deadlock Deadlock. But for the last few months, we've had metas where the only goal for high rank players is to pick characters that are strong in lane or strong in mid game. If those characters are not in your team, if you don't have 5 or 6 of those, you will lose. Whereas in low rank, you're really happy if you have like 2 late game carries because the game lasts so long, right? So how does Valve go about balancing this? Well, what they're doing right now is they're trying to keep the average casual player happy by making it so carries, late game characters, are weaker, right? We can see this in the last few patches. They have hard nerfed characters like 7, right? Infernus is a lot weaker. Infernus arguably, by the way, is still one of the only playable characters. And guess what? I was right. The game ended like 3 minutes after I predicted it, right? So the way Deadlock has combated this is they have only looked at the win rates and they see, oh, for most players that are casuals, these characters perform really well because the games last so long, so let's nerf them. And on paper, that seems very logical, right? But then if you play the game on high rank right now, that makes those characters that are carries unplayable right now. And it really feels that way, right? Like most of the hyper carries in the game are just really, really bad. There's like one exception, which is Infernus. And then maybe you can play Ivy as a carry, but I would argue even Ivy in middle ranks or low ranks is not being played as much as a carry anymore. Which brings me to my next point. The latest patch, instead of shaking that meta up, the spirit nuke or the early game nuke meta that we had, where Paradox is really oppressive, Mina is really oppressive, and then characters like Calico, etc. are really oppressive. Instead of adjusting those characters got slight slaps on the wrist, and the hard carry gun characters that were performing well in the patch before, Infernus and Ivy, got hard nerfed, right? And it's good that characters that are overperforming got hard nerfed, but for whatever reason, Valve seems to only hard nerf the carry characters while keeping all the other characters the same. The average player that plays this game daily or puts a lot of time into it, is passionate about the game, is playing the exact same game we've basically played for the last few months. Plus the additional characters, which obviously adds variety, right? But the meta has really not changed much for months now in that sense. Again, bringing me back to Pocket, character has been dominating the meta for basically like 6 months in a row now. There has not been a single meta where Pocket has not been at least very good for 6 months in a row. The same goes for characters like Abrams, right? Which is a fan favorite. He's very easy to get into. He's performing really well right now, not only because he's really tanky, so he can not die to that burst damage that I described, right? He's also just super easy to get into, which results in high-level players and streamers right now really not having the greatest time in the game. And this is not only me. I'm not gonna expose anyone in specific, but I've talked to a lot of other content creators for this game, some pro players that play this game, and it feels like almost everyone feels the same. Everyone, at least on high rank, is having a bad time with the game right now, because it really feels like, you either pick an early game spirit nuker, right, or gun nuker like Paradox, or you lose, right? It's like, it really feels like a hard 50-50 split between the characters that are viable and playable and characters that are not playable at all. And right now, that's gun characters. It seems to me like over the last year, right? Every time a gun character or a later game carry outperforms or it does well, they get instantly hard nerfed. But when the same thing happens to a spirit character like Calico right now, right, or Mina, nothing really seems to happen. Which begs the question, what's the point of Deadlock? Deadlock is a game that is supposed to be a hybrid between a shooter, right, and a MOBA. And I would argue the MOBA aspect is probably more important, right? Like, this game is incredibly complex and really engaging and fun to play. But the main thing with it, it's a mix, right? That is what makes Deadlock unique. It's the fact that characters have those abilities, game-breaking fight abilities, AoE abilities, stuns, disables, but there's also that aspect that you're in the third person and you're also shooting your gun, right? So clearly Valve wants this game to be a mix between a gun and a spirit / more traditional MOBA playstyle. And you can see this in the item shop very clearly, right? There's as many gun items in the game as spirit. And it doesn't matter to me here if you're in the camp of spirit or gun. Some people are like, oh, I find gun really boring, I only play spirit. And some people are like, I find spirit really boring, I only play gun. And it doesn't matter in what camp you are. In the end, arguably, the game is best when everything is viable, right? When Deadlock is Deadlock and not like a Dota copy, right? Because if we want to play Dota, we can just play Dota. So why is it that for the last year, we've had spirit and nuke damage outperforming gun damage for most of the time? And every time someone combats me on this take, I give them this example, which is bullet resilience and spirit resilience. Both items that are very good defensively, and one protects you from spirit damage, right? And one protects you from bullet damage. If you look at the win rate of those two items, in any rank, on any hero, you will realize that spirit resilience hard outperforms bullet resilience. I think there's like a 7 to 8% win rate difference. Spirit resilience has an above 50% win rate, which means the average player that buys this item at any point in the game has an above 50% chance of winning, whereas the average person that buys bullet resistance has a below 50% chance of winning. Well, it clearly means that spirit nuke damage is more prevalent in the game than gun damage right now, right? Guns, in general, only really come into effect once the game goes into super late game. And again, it's a thing that a lot of lower rank players experience because the games last so long. But I would argue that it's probably unhealthy for everyone if we nerf those gun characters further, because every time we nerf them, they become less and less playable. And eventually, right, the lower rank players from today that are playing today, in a few weeks, months, years from now, will look completely different, right? Everyone learns and improves, and the community improves together. So eventually we will get into a situation, which we're already getting to right now, in my opinion, where gun characters are really underperforming compared to spirit. So in fact, if you look at the hero roster in general, just from a basic point of view, there's barely any gun characters left. Most of the characters do their damage with spirit, and every time a gun character outperforms, they get their gun damage nerfed. I can give you a few examples. When Mirage very first came out, he was a full gun character. Barely anyone played spirit, and now he's turning into like a spirit hybrid, and the most common meta for him is full spirit damage, or like a lot of spirit items, he does a lot of damage with Jinsmark. A character like Wraith, used to be very gun focused, right? She literally has a gun with like 100 bullets, right? Like it's a machine gun. But they nerfed her so much that now the most viable playstyle is basically full spirit damage. And when I say full spirit damage, I really mean like 80% plus spirit damage, where most of your damage in the game comes either from cards or capacitor, which does spirit damage, by the way, even though it's a gun item. Same thing for something like Billy. When he first came out, he was actually very gun focused, but now he's moving more and more into spirit damage, nuke damage territory, because it's just a more valuable playstyle. The same thing for Infernus. Infernus used to do a lot of gun damage and is now mostly spirit damage. I could go on and on, right? Let me get one more, because I know there's another. Viper, super recent example. Viper, when she came out, full gun, and they keep on buffing her spirit, right? But they're not buffing her gun damage. And now we're seeing a meta where Viper one-shots you with Bola and Poison. So it seems like Valve wants to make this game Dota 2.0. That's not what I signed up for, and that's what probably a lot of you did not sign up for, right? When I first started playing the game, I was like, wow, this is cool. I love Dota, but I also love shooters, and I want to use my aim skills to do really well. So I love playing heroes that are aim focused. So when I first started playing, I played Haze, I played Wraith, right? And then I played 7, which is also like an aim-based character, right? If you play Power Surge 7, it's about hitting your gunshots, even though that is also technically spirit damage. My point being is that's what I signed up for. I think that's what a lot of other people signed up for. But Valve is just kind of alienating that entire part of the player base. And I would argue that is probably like 30, 40, if not 50% of the players that want to play gun, that love the fact that you have abilities, but you also can deal damage with your gun. Again, going back to my tier list, I'll show this off here real quick. My tier list here have always been a bit controversial, but the latest one I've made, you can ask other high-level players how they feel about it. It's a very accurate representation of how the game is being played on high rank. And I even added a sub-rank called the Void to show how big the difference feels for a lot of high-rank players between the meta characters and the non-meta characters. And the meta right now, because there's no draft in normal games, in high rank, is if you have too many of those lower rated characters, you basically almost insta-lose, right? And you can debate about some of these characters probably being a bit higher, like maybe Viscous, Haze and Billy should have been a bit higher. But there is just a very stark contrast between different playstyles. And if you look at the top, it is either characters that one-shot you, that kill you insanely fast, no matter how many anti-resist items you buy, or that become really tanky, like Kelvin and Shift, or both, right? Like Shift also instant kills you, but he's also incredibly tanky. And that is really the meta right now for most characters. In fact, there's like one exception, right? Which is Infernus, who in the later game starts to dominate. The reason I'm yapping about this so much is because I love the game, and I want the game to feel fun for everyone. And I do not understand why Valve is taking such a weird approach to balance. Even if you disagree with everything I just said, you would have to agree with me when I say it is fun if the meta at least gets like refreshed sometimes, right? Where you get a balance patch, not necessarily content, just a balance patch that puts some new heroes into the meta and removes some other heroes out of the meta, right? But that last patch and the few patches before then have not really done that at all. And I know a lot of you guys watching came in with the 6-0 patch, so yeah, you haven't experienced Deadlock before then, but this is how it has been for like multiple months now. It seems like they're not learning from their mistakes. If they want to engage most players and want to keep everyone happy, it should be their goal to make most characters viable and make the game feel fair. In my opinion right now, the game really doesn't feel fair. And again, a lot of other high-level players feel the same way. There's other issues like matchmaking balance, which could make, like, you know, I could make an entirely different video on. That's like the second major issue this game has right now. But it feels really unfun when half the roster I play seems kind of unplayable and I'm forced to, like, you know, one-trick Billy or pick up Haze. I'm just not the type of person that enjoys playing every character, and I'm also not kind of a meta slave in that sense where I always play what's best. I don't enjoy that playstyle. If you do, that's completely fine, and I respect your opinion, okay? But I want to provide some solutions, and I think all starts with them looking at the balance only numbers-wise and looking at the majority of players. I think they need to take more feedback of what the community actually perceives as fun and fair. Because I would say a lot of you guys probably do not enjoy getting one-shot by a Shiv or Mina, right? Or a Calico. So I think they need to consider the fun factor a bit more. In fact, they seem to have favorites as developers, where some characters, again, barely get touched, like Pocket, or when characters like Vindicta are super outperforming, they get slight nerfs and then major buffs to other parts of her kit. And now Vindicta is still an amazing character. Probably rated her too low, by the way. She in a high rank right now. She builds snipe with rapid recharge and just kills you because the snipe does like 800 damage on like minute 10. It's like crazy. It seems like half the player base is not really being listened to. Even if you disagree with my takes, on average we can see a shift in player sentiment. We can see that a lot of players are unhappy with the game. And I want to say that balance plays a big reason in that, because I think the content of the game is amazing, right? The art style, the heroes, the way they interact is amazing, right? It's a Valve game and it feels way more polished with every patch. But if we keep on balancing for win rates only, when some characters like Mina will always be OP, even with a 49% win rate. And I know that sounds contradictory, but like, if you don't play the character properly, you will feed your brains out. But once you get that, once you flip that switch in your brain and you learn how to play the character, you will feel overpowered. And most Mina players would agree that Mina is an overpowered character right now if you ask them on high rank, right? I know some people in chat are gonna, or some people in the comments are gonna say, Metroid's an alpha game, they don't really care about balance at all. But I think that's a bullshit argument, because, I mean, clearly they want player feedback, right? That's why they made it an open alpha and didn't make it closed. And you can only really keep a player for so long, right? The players that love the game right now are the hardcore fan base that will be the first to support the game once it finally releases. But if you get rid of those players, there's a very low chance they will come back, right? Like maybe on release they're gonna be like, oh, let's see what changed and give it another chance. But for a lot of people, it's like, I love this game, right? I'm having a lot of fun, but if it's not being fixed, I'm out, right? There's a one-time chance for every person in the world, and some people might give more chances, right? But you obviously, Valve wants to keep the current player base happy, to keep enough data coming in, which brings me to my next point, right? If they need data on this game and they want to balance this game around data, doesn't that mean that the data needs to be relevant? Right? Like, how are you gonna balance around enjoyment of the game when half the roster is not really playable, right? Like, if you've tried playing 7 right now and you're like a decent rank, you would understand what I mean, right? Like, if you play Drifter, if you play Sinclair, would you rather have a Mina or a Shiv or a Kelvin or a Paradox on your team, or would you have a McGinnis or a Viper, right? I know the answer would be the same for a lot of you guys. And yeah, it's just so infuriating that this exact patch has been in the game for months now. Really, with changes to some heroes, right? It's not the exact same patch, but the exact same vibe of characters that have been really strong. And instead of like going out of their way and actually changing the balance a bit to make it fresh, right? They pull this nothing burger of a patch that barely changes anything, keeps every single character the same, that is not Infernus or Victor, who got nerfed, right? And everyone else is literally the exact same strength level. I don't think a single character in this latest patch got like hard buffed or hard nerfed. Other than, arguably again, those two, Victor and Infernus. And Kelvin in specific, by the way, has been outperforming everyone for months, right? Some people ask me why Kelvin is so good. It's the fact that you can press dome and save yourself, save your team. Anyone that is trapped in your dome with you of the enemy, if you have like more than 2 of your friends in the dome with you, they are gonna die. It's just a ridiculous character. It's for me, I love the game. I'm making this video in hopes that someone at Valve watches, because I know Valve watches me, I know Valve watches other content creators, and I think they do care about us. I really want you to consider to like freshen up the game in that sense and think about what makes Deadlock Deadlock, right? Because right now it seems like we're moving into a classic MOBA, and while Deadlock would still be amazing as a classic MOBA, it wouldn't be Deadlock, in my opinion, right? Where nobody shoots their gun anymore and it's just spells. So my solution, as I said earlier, shake up the meta with a patch. Like, if you put out an update, make some bigger adjustments. And I'm not asking for new content, by the way. I'm not asking for new heroes. I'm asking for make bigger number changes to heroes. When a hero has been doing really well for months, you can move them out of the meta for a few weeks, months, you know, and put someone else at the spotlight that hasn't been performing well. Like Lash, right? Or like Dynamo, like Viscous, right? Maybe get rid of, you know, some of the one-shot potential that we had, right? Maybe make the time to kill a bit longer. I think right now, in general, the time to kill on characters is too fast. Yeah. On the other hand, I do understand what the issue with like late game carries is in lower rank. So I have another solution. If Valve doesn't want to balance a bit more for high rank, I have another solution. Then make carries a bit weaker in late game. I'm fine with Wraith, 7, etc. being a bit weaker in late game if they were performing a bit better early, right? Because then at least I would have a fair experience as a player where I can compete in the lane and do okay in the lane and okay in the mid game without being bullied for 20-30 minutes, right? Like right now, the way I play Wraith in high rank is I hide from everyone and I perma-farm, basically. I really avoid fights, and then I come out of jungle at 20 to 30 minutes and kill everyone. And that's not super fun, right? I am a carry player, I like farming, don't get me wrong. But I'd rather be a bit more proactive early, and then, you know, maybe be a bit weaker late game, right? So if you want to do that instead, if you want the roles to be a bit more equal, right? Because obviously right now they don't really want a lot of roles for Deadlock players, right? We don't have like super hard carry, or we don't have like the traditional roles like in Dota, where it's like a hard support and a hard carry, right? It's very fluent in Deadlock. So if they want to go for that, which I'm down to try, right? We're still testing, we're still in early alpha. Then make guns a bit stronger in the early game and then a bit weaker late game. Because that way, low rank players wouldn't struggle against them in late game, but I could still play the game in high rank and not suffer. So that would be my two solutions. I would like option number one more, where we balance a bit more for high rank. Not because I don't care about low rank, but because I think a big part of the beauty is that there's such a power discrepancy, where Mina is like really, really strong early and mid, and then she should fall off late, but she doesn't, right? Where Pocket is really strong early, but then defaults off, but then you get a character like Wraith that is really weak early and then comes in late. I think that's the beauty of Deadlock, right? That we have different characters that are good at different times in the game. And I do have to combat the average Redditors argument here for a second, where people are like, gun is OP because I play Pocket and I kill everyone for 20-30 minutes, but then at 30 minutes the Wraith comes out of jungle and kills me. You still performed better than the Wraith. In fact, you dominated most of the game. The reason you might feel like you're losing the game is not because Wraith is OP, it's because you failed to finish the game with the massive lead you had, right? Because you should have a massive lead, because your character is literally busted in the mid game. Same for something like Mina, right? So that's an argument that a lot of lower rank players have, is like, oh, just buy Spellbreaker. Yeah, I know in low rank games they last so long that everyone can afford them, but like in high rank games, that's not a thing. Like you can't just rush Spellbreaker. Like the games don't last long enough. A good Mina will kill you in the lane and then kill you in the mid game and then kill you in the late mid game, and then they will get mid boss and then they will finish the game before you can even afford Spellbreaker, you know? Unless you want to buy Spellbreaker first item, but then you don't do any damage, right? You can't buy Spellbreaker first item on like a character that is supposed to do damage, right? It's not a viable option on anyone really. So yeah, that's my short crash out on Reddit, because that's an argument I hear a lot that is just completely irrelevant. So I provided solutions. I provided solutions that don't affect low rank. I provided a solution that would make low rank, in my opinion, more engaging, because like this game has a big part of this game is about getting better at movement, getting better at aim, and getting better at understanding the game and finishing the game, right? That's what a lot of players want to do. And if you hold the low rank players' hands for the entire time, and you don't punish them for fucking up, right? And you're trying to cater around that, you can't balance around that, right? You can't balance for new and intermediate players, because they will always not play the game optimally, and you can't balance around that. It's just impossible, right? Otherwise, we get into a situation like here, where half the roster is suddenly very useless, in high rank at least. And the reason it still works in low rank is, again, because people are misplaying. So I think I got all my thoughts out. It's pretty frustrating right now. I know my content has been a bit negative the last few days. This last week has been really rough for me. I have a cool video coming that I've been working on for like over a week, which is one build for every hero. The Winter 2025 edition, I'm really excited about that one. There's a lot of new builds that are viable. And I still want to make educational content, and I love making educational content for this game, by the way. But playing the game myself, I'm really not having the greatest time right now. I'd rather teach than like play the game myself. And that's not really how a game should be, right? Like, I think the game is best when everyone wants to play at all times, right? So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. I'm really down for discussion, right? Please give me your perspectives. I really, part of the reason I made this video is because I want to get other people's perspectives. And yeah, let me know what you think. And until next time, see you friends, bye bye.